Well, we find ourselves here in June, and the cool part about June, unless you happen to have written a book recently, Will, is that is a time when normally things are slowing down. However, all three of us are at a particular point in our life, but that's not the case because, as you probably know, Will has written a book recently. It's called um,
Go ahead. You got
I
it.
almost said How Lucky. Oh God, you should buy How Lucky. Also, it's called The Time Has Come. I've read it. It's excellent. Go buy it at Amazon or your local bookstore or wherever it is you can get a book. It doesn't matter as long as you pay for it, and Will gets paid so we can have better equipment. The second thing is Scott has been knee deep in youth baseball and all that goes with that, and I've been busy with. Now, that's a very long way of saying, guys, we're sorry it's been since before G Day, but we're here to talk to you today.
And you are listening to episode 344. I'm going to go ahead and cut that short because I don't know how it's going to sound. You're listening to episode 344 of the Waiting Since Last Saturday podcast. I'm one of your co-hosts, Scott Duvall, joined by my other co-host, Tony Waller, and my least favorite co-host, Will Leach. And I'm just saying that because you were last in line. No, but today we have not podcasted in 8 weeks from yesterday. April 12th was the last time that we did a podcast. So this will be our summer catch-up show as we kind of get in fighting shape for the college football season, which is about 86 days from kickoff. Georgia kicks off in 86 days. If you count week 0, subtract 7 days, so that would be 79 days? 36 days. So, and we're also trying one other new thing. We might, if this whole thing works out, and if I remember to hit record and the visuals look good, then this will be on YouTube as well, which is something that I would like to investigate and try for this coming college football season. So, Tony,
all the cool podcasters are doing it.
I mean, I feel a little bit of pressure being a video editor to kind of figure out how to put my podcast.
It's a problem too because it's going to be super hard to not. Because I mean, honestly, I'm assuming every time that you guys don't know this, but every time I talk, Scott and Tony both immediately roll their eyes and start looking at their phones, and so that's going to be harder. That's going to be harder in a YouTube environment.
True.
I also think it's great that you don't notice that even when we're in person. So I think that's fair.
Yeah, exactly.
So Tony, you're in Savannah, and Will, you're in Athens, and I'm in Watkinsville.
I'm doing a 24-hour stopover in Athens. Before, yes, I have been in. Yesterday, I was in Chicago. Before that, I was in Los Angeles. Before that, I was in St. Louis, and then I was in New York twice. And now, on the last day of the first round of the book tour is Tuesday in Missoula, Wednesday, in Missoula, Montana. If you are in or near Missoula, please come by. It will be a fun time. If you come by, I promise I will buy. If you are a listener to this podcast and at that event in Missoula, I will buy you 3 beers of your choice. That is an actual fact, because I think right now we've had a very good turnout at these events, but Missoula, I was kind of a last minute addition. I assume it's going to be me, the person that owns the bookstore, and perhaps a goat or a stray buffalo. So, which is fine. I've never been to Montana, so I'm excited to see it. But it's been a very successful tour. It's been very, very fun. We're going to have actually a big event in St. Simons the Thursday before the Georgia-Florida game, which I'm very, very excited about. Right on Books, which is right with the Jittery Joe's in there. So we're going to have I'm finally going to Georgia-Florida for the first time. I even got my Airbnb knocked down. Now I got it set up. I had to confirm that I was not a college student and didn't have a bunch of college students with me. Once I confirmed that, they allowed me to have the Airbnb. So we're all set. So this is my first year of the Georgia-Florida game, which I'm very excited.
So, Will, how are things going with the book? I botched the name of the book. It is called The Time Has Come. Any similarities to places in Athens are purely coincidental, but it's fantastic. And I sent you a text when I finished it. You just nailed the landing, man. You really, really did a great job of researching all the characters. This book is clear. You care about your characters. And I didn't mean to give a mini book review here, but it's really a great read. Very different than How Lucky, which is fine because you are flexing your muscles as a writer, and it's clear you're really, really good at this shit.
Oh, well, thank you. And hopefully, and there's still thematic connections to How Lucky, and there's even a Daniel reference for those of you who have read How Lucky. He pops up at one point. But it's going great. I would say that I keep joking on the book tour because whatever the next book is going to be is going to evolve somewhat about how The Time Has Come does. And if like the next, so you'll know if the next book that I write is some strange esoteric, confusing, difficult, but mad piece of art, of pop art, you'll know that this one did great. And if the next one is Travis and Daniel from How Lucky solving mysteries out of a van with a cute dog, you'll know this one didn't do well. We're in the middle. That's where we are. We're in the middle. We're doing fine. We're doing fine. So it hasn't quite exploded like How Lucky, but it's done very fine, and they're very happy. Which to me has always been the goal of these. Always make this the minimum, where they're happy with how things are going, and then hopefully one will bust out. So we've definitely found as more people read it, they are telling other people about it, which is the way it's supposed to work. People do tend to like it. So, but we're gonna keep making them. And after I get back from Montana, I will go to London for the Cardinals Cubs series. Nothing book related going on with them. Just taking my parents there for the Cardinals Cubs series, and then I'm back and actually here for the summer, which will be kind of nice because I kind of miss this place that I live. Like you said,
How are the Cardinals doing this year, Will?
I have not had the opportunity to check the standings, so I'm not sure. I'm not sure how it's going.
I just look at the NL East standings. I don't pay attention to the Central.
I'm just gonna take a big swig of coffee and go look at the MLB standings right now.
Okay.
What? Oh my God! Yeah, it's a bit tough start. But they're fortunately they're not in the same division as the Braves, and so they still have a chance because the Braves are a good team, and the NL Central has no good teams. I know there's been some frustration with the Braves because the pitching and so on. You guys are gonna be fine. If only everyone could have the problems that the Braves are.
Yeah, well, I'm going to have the opportunity to go to the Sunday game at Wrigley in August. The Cubs Cardinals. It turns out I have a trip there, and our friend Paul Pless is going to join me. He's a Cubs fan, but he's a good Cubs fan. But I when I was looking at the calendar, I'm sorry, late July, not August. I looked at the calendar. and was like, well, I guess I have to get to Chicago early that day because it's the series finale of the Cubs Cards, and it seems like it will tell you a little bit about how both teams are doing in that there are an awful lot of seats for a late July game still available.
Yeah, it's not going great enough. But anyway, so I'm excited, and I will be excited too once we get back to our regular schedule. I'm ready to get back going. I picked up my first copy of Athlon. The Athlon guide is out. I'm very proud to report. So I'm already starting it's around this time of year when I make my first trip to some sort of water place and drink a light beverage and read my Athlon college football preview. So I've not done that yet, but I do possess it. So I'm prepared accordingly. So I am ready. I'm ready for that.
Is Athlon the go-to, or has it changed? Because I just read online. I don't pick up the magazines, and plus, I don't go to the grocery store magazine aisle really anymore. But I remember it was Lindy's.
Yeah, it's basically just things about guns and whatever celebrity just died.
You got Lindy's, you've got Athlon.
And those are really kind of the only two.
Are they the only two? And then you've got who's the guy that writes in the small? Phil Steele.
That's not
the one about Phil Steele. I've not gotten my Athlon yet, but it did just come out, so I have a little time.
I did.
Athlon is generally the best one.
I did also see that I don't remember this occurring last year, but if you're a season ticket holder, they sent me an email wondering if I would like a physical copy of the media guide, which I think my last one is 2019. So I ticked yes on it that I would like it. And so maybe if you're a season ticket holder, you might get that option, but I guess they're only offering it to season ticket holders. I don't know.
That'll be $200, please. So speaking of water places, Scott said I was in Savannah. I will be in Savannah tomorrow for the Georgia State Bar meeting. I'm actually in Baxley, Georgia, just north of on the Altamaha River, because podcasting is a visual medium. I'm going to show a picture in case Scott decides to do this. I am on the balcony of my friend Stephen Tillman's place, which is, 200 yards downriver from the place my parents have had for about 30 years. on the Omaha River. But I felt like I should shout out Stephen and tell him thank you. He is the only one with good internet in South Georgia. That's not true, but he's the only one that's close with good internet. So I appreciate him giving me the opportunity to be here, because I really, 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 really wanted to do a podcast with y'all, because I know it seems weird, but I miss talking to you. And even though we trade texts, if we don't actually schedule this, by the way, if you're not a full-fledged adult yet, this is how adult, for the most part, adult, especially adult male interactions and friendships take place. You have to schedule them because you just have to, right?
Yeah,
It's not like you that, I mean,
We'll get out of here. Once the kids get out of here, we don't have to, right? Then we can.
I would assume that's right.
Look, I love the kids. I love my kids. They're fantastic people. The tax deduction's not high enough, but still, I love my kids. But no, it's all about that, because anytime I schedule something, if it's not on the calendar at least 2 weeks ahead, invariably something will pop up, and I know all you two are in the same situation. But I appreciate y'all making yourselves available today, because frankly, I was really close to taking my phone and just talking to random people on the street. I mean, more than I actually do.
That would probably go viral, Tony. So you might should do that. You could make all the YouTube AdSense money with that.
Yeah, probably. So, but since we talked last, I have become the president of NALP. I gave a rousing speech in Vancouver, which is where our conference was. I am happy to report that I made it almost all the way through without crying. I only cried when I got to my kids, which is a victory in and of itself. And Scott, you've been busy with Walker's baseball.
Yeah, he didn't play softball. Yeah.
He'd be good.
Yeah, he would be good. But we've done a lot of, this is really the first year, I tell a lot of parents who, I see, I do some work at the yard training over here in Watkinsville, and he didn't start travel ball till he was 14U. Now he's in 15U. And I think that it did two things. One, it prepared him properly for high school, but two, by not starting till he was 14, we didn't get tired of it for 8, 9, 10, 11, 12U. He just played Little League, and that was it. But it's been a lot of fun, because it's still kind of new to me. He played his freshman high school season, and now he's playing a bunch of perfect game tournaments, where that's a whole different thing, because it's not right down the road. Like last week, we were in Kennesaw for 3 days. This weekend, we're going to Macon, Georgia for 3 days. And then you have to also purchase your admittance fee into there to watch your child play in a game where the only fans are the parents. But I digress. It is great. It's great training. The teams are fun. The teams are good. You see a lot of really, really good baseball. And you can see the learning curve really jumps up, because if they're wanting to be serious about high school baseball, which he is, it's the same way my other son, Jack, is serious about high school golf. He's currently at the Chris Hack golf camp right now as we speak. I think that's a good thing for these teenagers to occupy their time during summer. And before I end, I want to congratulate my son, Jack. He just received a job offer from the University of Georgia golf course. So if you out there play golf, you might see Jack washing your cart or checking you in or getting you some range balls. Make sure you give him a tip.
If the tip is plant your corn late, it's going to be a wet spring. One last thing before we talk about talk about some Georgia athletic stuff. I do want to tell everybody, Will and Scott know this, but I had the opportunity to interview Ryan Nanny of the Shutdown Fullcast earlier this week. We'll get that up in the next couple of weeks. It was evergreen, because if you've listened to the Shutdown Fullcast, as a member of Shutdown Fullcast, Ryan does not stick to any sort of script, schedule, whatever. Probably the most current event thing we talked about was Live Golf, since that literally was in the middle of breaking when we were talking, or the PGA Live Golf not merger or whatever they're calling it. But I did want to make sure I talked about that. And it occurred to me that we did have a couple of people, both at my conference and in the wild, ask if I was the guy from the Georgia podcast, which never ceases to be awesome. So we appreciate, and there was one listener in particular that reached out on Twitter who now lives in Vancouver, and I appreciate him doing that. But it's a lot of fun. I also want to say thanks to Larry Edwards for continuing to say we need another podcast. As a friend of mine in Milledgeville who reaches out occasionally, it's like, we need another podcast. Stuff like, I'm fine, Larry. I will text the guys and we'll set a time.
So Georgia stuff.
Yeah, I'm up for that.
So I'll start it out by saying, I am at the river with my father, who is he is an interesting, although I think probably would say an average consumer of UGA athletic stuff, meaning about 75% of what he hears, it's either through the SEC network or talking to people at church. He is utterly convinced Stetson Bennett is going to be starting quarterback for the Los Angeles Rams. He will not be. But on top of that, he is appropriately worried about what is going to happen with the offense with the new quarterback. Of course, being from Pierce County, he thinks Stetson was the greatest quarterback in the history of fill in the blank. And it's just hard to argue, at least standing here today, that he is not an all-time great for UGA. But I also think it is worth taking a minute to talk about a big elephant in the room, which is Georgia football players driving. And I realize that's a little bit of a whiplash. I don't have any wild sage take on this other than say that I work with law students who have a lot on the line, and they make dumb decisions too. And presumably they are, they are certainly more mature on one level. They're usually older, but they also are. They also don't have the specter of Kirby Smart or whatever else might come down the pack. I don't know there's an answer to that. Will, I'd love to hear your thoughts on that, just because, you are you're also a sports writer, and you're also the smart guy in the room. What can be done?
I don't know what more you can do. The difference between your law students and the difference between us when we were stupid college students is if we did something stupid, it didn't make the news. It didn't reflect on something that was larger. I guess the law students could. But generally speaking, if I did something stupid in college, nobody cared because I was not important. And it's not like they've known. I doubt the Daily Illini would report on its own staffers. Nobody really cares. And so I think that's really the thing, particularly now. I don't think we're not the old Richt has Kirby Smart lost control of his program and nothing like that, of course. But I think that there is. I think these are individual incidents, but you would think in the wake of, the worst possible thing that could possibly happen at the worst possible time, that there would be some sort of come to Jesus moment for a lot of people, and so every time you see any evidence of that not happening, it's a little disturbing, particularly because I would argue one of the downsides of kind of the way that sports in general and college sports specifically are run right now, they are very siloed. They're very close-served. We really don't get a sense of what's going on inside of these programs. There was a time where after every game or at every practice, reporters could talk to every player all the time. And there was this sort of transparency and this sort of understanding. And now media is something to be controlled or something to met certain things out to. So because of that, we don't know we don't really have a sense of what's ever actually going on in the program other than when these public events happen. And so therefore it's very difficult it's always a little frustrating when you'll see someone from within a program, whether it's from the athletic department or from the football program itself or whatever program's having it, in Georgia or anywhere else, when well, you don't know what's going on inside this program. I'm telling these guys, this is just the public stuff. This is all you see. Well, there's a reason for that. Make us believe that. Because right now, all we're allowed to see are these public instances that are bad. And so I would argue, I think in a general sense, teams that have won two consecutive national championships do not seem to be in the self-humbling business. So for good reason, right? But I do think that if you think I think there's a connection between the success of the program and a general understanding that they do not feel particularly accountable to any outside forces. I don't think there's any question those two things are connected. As long as they keep winning national championships, they won't have any problem. The problem is you don't always win national championships every year. And so I think the programs that do this correctly, and there aren't many anymore, are the ones that have more transparency and have more understanding of what's going on with these. And remember, you're not talking to reporters, you're talking to the public. You're talking to the people. Like, that's the idea. And I think when things are as closed off as they are at Georgia and really a lot of places right now, when all you see, the only thing we ever learn about these players and what's going on in there is when something like this happens. The way to fix that is to crack the door open a little bit and let people know what's going on. But if they're not going to do that, I think it's reasonable. It's reasonable to not take them at their word, to be like, these are isolated incidents. This is not what's going on in the program. Sure, you say that, but that's all you say. And so I'm skeptical in that regard. But how you fix it, I mean, that I don't know. I'm not a football coach ahead of a large number of people. I think it's one thing to have a player make a mistake every once in a while. It's another thing to have, again, the worst possible thing that could possibly happen that did not happen that long ago. And to have still incidents in the wake of that, I think is pretty disturbing.
Yeah, I think you bring up a good point, and that is there only so much of the message you can control, and you certainly can't control how. Look, we can live in a world where people are probably unnecessarily pearl clutching. And also, that's the only thing they can do because that's the only information they have, which is kind of the way I think.
That's the thing, right? Like if we were if we were like, oh, yeah, we know this kid, or we know we have a very good sense of what this program is like behind closed doors, and so we know that this is an aberration, but we don't see that, we don't know that. We're just supposed to take everybody's word on that. And so when stuff like this leaks out, or an incident like this comes up, and again. Do I think it's different if they hadn't had the high profile incident about after the thing? Of course it's different. But like that to me is the sort of incident that should shake a place to its foundations. And I think it clearly hasn't. And I don't want to be too negative about this, because I like to talk about the awesome new quarterback recruit that they got, which is something we have not had a chance to talk about either. We will get to that. But you know my general sense on this. I think that outside of just sports and football, when people have power and are not held accountable to it, sometimes that power is abused. And I think that accountability, particularly at a public university where all of us are all giving a crap load of money to these people, accountability should not be too much to ask. For the record, I don't think any of these guys are jerks.
No,
like they're young.
No.
You saw, like, again, I did a lot dumber things really into my 30s, if I'm being entirely honest. And so, I a lot worse things than that. And I get it. I just think that, like, listen, I think the athletic department has not fully reckoned with what happened after the championship parade, and I think that, or I think you are right in the macro, but in the micro, in the idea, like, these are kids. Mistakes happen. Like, they're not monstrous people or anything. Like, it doesn't mean it's an athletic department out of control. It just means I don't know. And there really hasn't been any sort of public reckoning in it. So because I don't know, it's reasonable not to just take them.
Yeah.
Okay. Hey, new quarterback recruit. That was exciting.
Where's he from? Where's he from?
He is from he's
Tony?
from Phoenix. And more to the point,
who is that?
Dylan Raiola, the big quarterback dude that they got. He's from Phoenix, but his name is still Dylan, so he has the name of a Southern dude. Like, he has the name of a Southern. I know a lot of Dylans around here, but it's not Dylan Bob, but it's still Dylan. I think it's funny. It's always good to be the program. Like, I don't think Georgia people quite appreciate how much Nebraska had put into this guy. Like, he was going to be the savior. They've got their new coach. His uncle played for the team. He was he was all built up to be their guy. And Georgia, where he has no connections, and a place that theoretically has not always been able to usher 5-star quarterbacks quite through the system the way that that we all thought they were going to. They're like, yeah, we'll take him. We'll take him. We'll just go ahead and grab him. That it's good to be the king. That's the sign of what's happening when you just grab a guy and say, yeah, no, we'll just take him, and then you just get him. And Nebraska's like completely falls apart because of it. It's nice to be that team.
Well, and the crazy thing is there's a 4-star that had already committed, Puglisi, or I think that's his last name, Ryan Puglisi. I could be messing that up, but anyway, he's still committed to come to Georgia. And of course, you got Vandergriff, you've got Beck, you've got Gunnar Stockton. I mean, you don't want someone to transfer, but I mean, somebody's gonna. And I think Raiola is definitely with what we've seen, the good that we saw of Stetson towards his last 2 years winning national championships. I think that you're gonna get really high caliber dual threat with Raiola. And I mean, with the tight ends that they're stacking, there was another mention yesterday of some other new 5-star plus maybe 6-star type tight end that they're just stacking up there. Raiola's tweeting about it. He's helping recruit, which is always something you like to see when a kid commits. If you see on their public Twitter feed that they're also encouraging other 4-star and 5-stars to follow suit. But yeah, it's exciting. I mean, even my dad texted me the day he committed, and I knew that when he did that it really made some waves around.
Yeah, and I mean, so the thing that's going on with Georgia right now is you hear the trope that certain programs recruit themselves. Georgia's that program now, right? As long as Kirby Smart is here, as long as he is leading the vision from the top down, you have to assume that Georgia recruiting is going to maintain a pretty high level. That doesn't mean Alabama is going anywhere, and we'll certainly get to the 24 and beyond schedule in a minute and go into divisionless SEC football. But I think that's going to lead to even more of a two kings and then the rest kind of situation, at least as long as Nick Saban stays at Alabama. Who knows? He might not even coach the 24 year. That's not a prediction. I'm just saying the dude's old. And when you consider what Georgia's doing on stockpiling talent, I wouldn't say unfair is the right way of feeling it because it's our team, but it certainly harkens back to before there were signing limits, when Georgia has two of the top 15 or so quarterbacks from the entire class signed right now, or at least committed right now. And that doesn't even count the 5-star lineman that committed, the 5-star tight end that committed, the 5-star receiver that committed, the 5-star running back that committed. And the people want to make a big deal about, well, Bear Alexander left and Georgia's NIL and all this stuff. I think Georgia, while they wanted Bear Alexander to stay, I think it's safe to say that Bear Alexander saw himself and his role and his place in the Georgia firmament to be different vision-wise than what Kirby Smart, Will Muschamp, and Glenn Schumann had in mind for him. That's I think I don't like to use the word culture just because it feels like a lazy trope almost, but it doesn't fit into what the interior or the inside the locker room, the big team, little me concept that Kirby seems to be preaching in making work with this group. So it is exciting when you look at recruiting. I stay out of recruiting just because it feels, I wouldn't say dirty. It's not even the right way of feeling. It just feels almost like until they sign, it's news cycle fodder until they sign. So.
Yeah, and there's a lot of people, and all of y'all listening probably subscribe or know, but there's a lot of recruiting analysts, especially just on the Georgia beat, that do a much, much better job than the three of us could combined. And they're interested in it and they follow it. And so, whether you subscribe to, I don't even know, I don't subscribe to them, 24/7, there's On3 or I don't know. I mean, there's a ton of them out there, so you can get your information that way. But yeah, I mean, it trickles down. With big signings like this, especially in the off season or commitments, when it trickles down like that, kind of what Tony said. The teams that are, like South Carolina or Tennessee trying to chase Georgia down, I guarantee you, there's a segment of their fan base that they're kind of like, I mean, what do we have to do to catch a break? So
this has been the plan.
I love
right?
it.
This
Yeah.
is why Kirby Smart's here, right?
Right.
This is exactly what's supposed to happen. Is you just stack on stack on stack.
Well, that's how I would feel. I mean, that's how I used to feel during the end of the Richt era, or during the Richt era, when Georgia was just so close, and you'd see Florida or Alabama jump up, Auburn. It's like, come on, can we catch a break? And that's kind of a really good feeling now that we're twice on top. And I mean, with our schedule, it might be 3. I mean, we can get into that, but I mean,
well, definitely,
that schedule is it's different. Let's just put it
I
that
would be
way.
curious. Remember when we had Seth Emerson on and he talked about how his story traffic numbers were lower
Yeah.
after they won the championship? I would be curious if anyone covers recruiting. Anecdotally, I find obsession with Georgia recruiting at a much lower level than I have seen it since before they won the championships. And it's not because people don't care. It's just everyone's like, oh yeah, well, we're going to win these wars. Like the Manning recruitment was like somewhat a thing. But otherwise, like generally speaking, I mean, always be recruiting, and they're always recruiting. And Georgia generally doesn't lose these battles. There's sometimes like maybe is this the year they finished second to Ohio State or second to Alabama? But the idea that there's some sort of issue is killing.
Tony, you're echoing.
Yeah.
Did you do something different?
Was I talking? No, was I
No,
talking?
we're just hearing your audio.
We're hearing your audio. Did you change something?
No. So okay. All right, hold on.
The worst part about that is hearing what I sound like after I talk.
Right.
Okay, now it stopped.
Oh,
No,
you turned it down.
Okay, I can barely hear y'all, but that's okay. That's fine. I'll listen close.
So wait, so does that sound coming from your headphones into your mic? That has to be what's happening.
Yeah, I don't have my headphones at all.
Huh.
Oh, well, but you don't have headphones in at all?
No, I took them out earlier because y'all couldn't hear me when I had the headphones in.
And it worked for the first 30 minutes of this podcast to where we didn't hear an echo.
Yeah.
So carry on,
Anyway.
Tony.
Yes. Hey, okay, G-Day,
echo
Carson
now?
Beck.
Oh,
G-Day,
now you're back.
Carson
Now you're
Beck.
back.
Yeah, G-Day, Carson Beck. He's a quarterback. We knew that, right?
I mean, I like him. I think he's good. I mean, I know we saw limited action with him last year, but I mean, I've seen him up close. He's definitely prototypical. I don't know. I saw him at a golf tournament. He's got all these tattoos down his legs. Looks great. I mean, he's athletic. He looks cool. He kind of looks the part. A good leader. And he's got a cannon for an arm and been in the system. Seemingly this is his 3rd year. So I'm thinking of big things coming out of Beck. I mean, I know he's kind of an unknown commodity, but Vandergrift is probably going to have to do something special in fall camp, maybe even Stockton to usurp him.
Yeah, I think the interesting thing about Beck is he is his prototypical drop back quarterback. It's in a weird way, it is it's kind of interesting that when you couple that with Mike Bobo being the new offensive coordinator, I suspect our offense, even though it's going to have the vestiges of modern offenses that Todd Monken has brought here. Did I get the name right finally?
Yes, just in time for him to leave.
Yeah. Yes, Todd Monken. So when you get the vestiges of modern offense, and with what we did with Mike Bobo, keep in mind Mike Bobo up until Todd Monken had among the more prolific offenses in Georgia history in 11 and 12. So I think we'll be in a situation where the offense is going to be fine. The offensive line. Look at the schedule, the way it sets up. The first game that you're worried about would be the South Carolina game. That game's at home. It's going to be the CBS game. It's to us old heads, it is weird that CBS is going to start their last year of CBS on SEC, SEC on CBS, not with Florida, Tennessee, but with Georgia, South Carolina. And 2008, Tony would have never believed that's a thing. But you get Carson back, getting to start with the offense, having a couple of games that are going to be. We'll put it this way: if they're not good warm-up games, we have bigger problems than who our quarterback is.
They've announced some of the game times already, which seems a little bit early. And Tony, I know that's your jam.
Semi-night game.
Semi. Yeah. How do you feel about that?
Well, I mean, 6:00 in September is not a night game.
Right. And depending on that game, depending on how hot it is, how that game goes, it can have a running clock in the fourth quarter anyway. So
yeah,
we've seen that. We've seen that in the past. But I don't know. I mean, I guess if it's gonna be that hot, 6:00 is. I'd rather be at 6 than 3:30.
Oh, I'm fine with 6:00. And the way that I mean, here's the thing. I don't want to get ahead of ourselves, but the way South Carolina finished last season and all of the stuff that Shane Beamer has been doing, I fully expect South Carolina to potentially finish second in the East this year. I think Tennessee's going to come back down a little bit, down to earth, even though I like their quarterback, Milton. I think he's going to be a good replacement for Hooker. But, Shane Beamer, I think he's got that something special. He's not as dynamic as Kirby, and Kirby humbled him and their fans. By the way, the fans were gone in the second quarter last year, but I digress. He humbled South Carolina, but I'm already circling that game that could be a little bit of a tight one as we get towards the fourth. No running clock versus South Carolina this year.
I mean, I would take a running clock against South Carolina always.
Just generally speaking, that is like that speaks to what the schedule is next year.
Yeah,
it's like South Carolina, well, guess tell us something. Because if it's not that, it's nothing for, I think that, and again, I feel obliged to point out for all the complaints with the schedule, this is not their fault. They wanted to play Oklahoma.
Right.
There was nothing they could do. They did not choose to get rid of Oklahoma and put Ball State there.
Right.
They wanted to play Oklahoma. It is not, the early schedule is pretty lousy, but it is not actually their fault.
Yeah. You're going to hear a lot of national pundits this year who don't really do their homework, trash the Georgia schedule and say, oh, can you believe this? But remember what Will just said. It is a matter of fact that the SEC literally 5 months ago said, Georgia, you can't play this game, this awesome sectional game, that you and your fans were looking forward to. You can't play it because they decided to come to the SEC and it just would be weird. So remember that.
Yeah, because that game would have been fun. And it's all you're talking about.
You just have to go win the national championship game by 58 points again. That's all you can do.
Yeah,
that is all you can do.
Yeah, Georgia's the evil villain, which I love. I'm embracing that this year.
Speaking of schedules, do we want to talk 8-game, 9-game? What do you think? 8-game, 9-game. What do you think, Tony?
I think it'll eventually go to 9 games. I think there's some stuff that's bubbled up that's interesting. Kind of the easy money in assessing why it didn't go to 9 games is like ESPN wouldn't quite get to the number that SEC wanted, but there has been some recent talk that there were a couple teams that had talked among themselves, and among them Alabama, which is weird, that did not want to go to 9 games, at least originally. It's hard to say whether you're looking at this practically. Of course, I want them to go to 9 games. I like in that way. I like tradition. I want to keep Florida and Auburn on the schedule on a regular basis. The thing that I'm worried about them punting this down the road is I'm afraid that they're going to put South Carolina in our pod instead of Kentucky, which is just going to be like, if that is the outcome of this, I'm going to be really mad about it. I'm going to be mad at people, at them, and without any idea who them are. But I'm going to be mad at them for ruining Georgia, Florida, Kentucky being in the same pod in a way. But having said that, yeah, I think it should be 9 games. It makes sense. I think that is where most I think that is where most places are going. 9 games also allows for more marquee matchups, which is kind of what you want to have if you're going to go to ESPN and ask them to renegotiate a deal that they don't have to renegotiate. And that is kind of what you want out of bringing Oklahoma and Texas over, is that you want more cash, you want more money. You want some more, I guess, artillery shells when it starts with okay, who is actually going to wind up to be in whatever the top division of college football is in 5, 10, 7, or 7, 5, 7, 10, 15 years, because I think that's also where we're going in some way. But I don't think it's going to be a hard split in that these teams are in this division, these teams that division. You're going to have these teams are in conferences where the money makes it so they're always going to have 2 or 3 teams in the 12-team playoff. And these divisions these conferences are the ones that are almost always going to have only one team in the 12-team playoff. I'm not quite as bleak or whatever the sociological word is as some, in thinking that the SEC and Big Ten are going to pick up 5 more teams each and just make this a 40-team Super Division One. But I guess if they do, they do. But getting back to the SEC schedule, what they're going to do in 24 just makes a ton of sense, as long as the scheduling is semi-fair and you don't wind up with something ridiculous like Georgia having to play Alabama, LSU, and Texas A&M all on the road, and also Florida.
Before we move on to, I don't know if we have any more football stuff. One more football thing I want to make sure we got to before we talked about the baseball situation. Just decided it's happened since we were here last. I'm going to do a little trivia time for you guys. Speaking of Athlon, there are 3 first-team All-Americans from Georgia on the Athlon All-American team. Name them.
Brock Bowers.
Yes. One is a junior, one is a sophomore.
I haven't looked at our roster in 9 months.
Oh, I know that. This is actually my overarching point. I guarantee you, if Illinois had an All-American, preseason All-American, I would definitely know who it was. because there's just so many. Not because I love Illinois so much, but we just never get them. So we would obviously know. Georgia is there's 3. So.
Will, we're not in our midseason form.
I know this is.
I'm wanting to say Chris Smith and Nakobe Dean. I don't even know. Roquan Smith.
No, he's already graduated. The correct answers are Jamon Dumas Johnson.
I wouldn't have guessed that.
JDJ and Malachi Starks. Yeah. Malachi Starks was probably the easiest.
Yeah.
The point is
that doesn't surprise me. So
Georgia is just stacking. Georgia is so good that they have preseasons All-Americans that we can't name.
Yeah, that's true.
How good
that is
Georgia
true.
is. So, you want to talk about baseball?
Yeah, let's talk about it. Wes Johnson was hired this week, actually, as the new baseball coach. He's got quite a resume. I mean, he started out, but he's been coaching for a while. He's about 50 years old. He's been all throughout the SEC West. He's been a pitching coach at Mississippi State, Arkansas, LSU. He went to the Minnesota Twins in 2019 and then left mid-season in 2022 to then go be the pitching coach for LSU. What that tells me is that he is he was always looking towards this head coaching position. This is just my assumption based on looking at his coaching timeline. But he's regarded as one of the best, if not the best, pitching coach in the SEC. And what was Georgia lacking this college football season? Pitching. I think they almost led the league in walks and hit batters. The offense was pretty decent, but they just couldn't hold leads with the pitching stuff. So maybe this will help keep some of the guys that might be dipping their toe into the transfer portal because of that LSU pedigree, and then also hopefully attract some new arms and keep some other guys looking Georgia's way. But I'm excited about it. I hated to see Strickland go, but it kind of had to be done after 10 years. But Wes Johnson, I think he's gonna be a good hire.
Yeah, I reached out to our friend Zach Rao at LSU. he was kind of hold on Wes Johnson, just in that he's like, yeah, we had a lot of nagging pitching injuries, but they were, it's like, I said, well, how excited were y'all to get him last year? He's like, oh, we were very excited. A guy that had like essentially left a major league team as pitching coach to come down and be your pitching coach. You're excited by that. And that's kind of the way I stood on it. There are a lot of rumors out there that Georgia pursued Campbell's head coach, something Hare, I think is his name. And that, maybe money got in the way. That's a really hard thing for me to get my head around, that if Josh Brooks wanted to hire somebody, and look, if you don't want to come here because you don't want to come here, that's one thing. I just didn't feel like money would be the thing. That feels like something somebody's agent would say, to tell a non-newspaper reporter. I think this person was at Baseball America that actually said that. But yeah, I think I'm with Scott. It's I hated to see Strickland go. By all accounts, a nice guy, good guy, someone that really cared about his players. But on the other hand, when you play baseball in the SEC, you were a top 20, 25 baseball team in the country this year, with pitching that wasn't that great, and you still didn't make the NCAA tournament. And that's just because of the neighborhood you live in, right? You live in the toughest conference. I mean, there were like 9 of the 16 national seeds were SEC teams, which is just ridiculous. So yeah, it was time for a change. You can live in a world where it's time for a change and also hate that change had to be made.
He'll be cursing the pandemic forever. That team was.
Oh, that team was tough. Yeah, that team was really, really good.
So far, it's early, but I don't necessarily. I feel like a lot of the hires have been not bad ones so far. I mean, let's not forget, like, people, for all the talk of Kirby Smart's, you don't have to do much to this athletic department because everything's rolling. There's a lot of coaches that have had to be replaced at the high profile programs here at Georgia over the last 2 years. So we will definitely get a sense of where Josh Brooks' hiring successes are, because he has basically replaced every major position other than football since he's got here. So we'll find out.
Yeah. Well, I mean, when you think about men's basketball and apply that to baseball, if you make the kind of improvement in baseball that Mike White made in basketball, I mean, you're definitely a second weekend team, right? You're hosting a super regional probably. So because Georgia Georgia went into the SEC tournament as a team that you win a couple of games, you're going to be on the bubble, win 3, and you're probably in.
Yeah.
And that's when you consider kind of what the baseball team looked like they were super streaky, right? They lost some games they had no business losing. They lost some teams that had business losing too, but they also swept number 4 Arkansas on the road. So it was there. It just wasn't consistent.
Yeah. Yeah. Losing to teams like Princeton, Jacksonville State, and then losing 2 out of 3 down the stretch to Missouri, a team that wasn't that great this year. I was hoping they were going to catch fire, kind of like how Texas A&M did. They almost made the super regional. They lost to Stanford in the championship game out in Palo Alto. But I love college baseball. It comes at the perfect time, especially when it gets hot. The end of the SEC season. And then I'll sit there, and Walker and I will watch the regionals all day long. We'll watch the super regionals this weekend, and of course Omaha is fantastic. But I'm excited about the change. I wonder if Cale Strickland, the stud recruit from North Oconee, Scott Strickland's son, who was committed to Georgia, I wonder if he will still be considering that, or if he will be going elsewhere. So
my guess is no.
Probably not.
Generally speaking, I don't know if I would sign up for a place that just fired my dad. As much as I love the red and black.
When's the baseball draft? I just never remember.
It's also, they do it All-Star weekend. That's the big thing that they do now.
That's right. Okay, I couldn't remember. I knew it was in the summertime. I just couldn't remember when it is.
It's Sunday, July 9th of the week. Basically the week right before the All-Star break.
Okay.
Right before the All-Star break. So they switched that. It's actually kind of madness. It's good. MLB's trying to pump up the draft and make it more of a TV thing.
I watched it last year.
Yeah, it's better than it used to be, but it's still in college football, like everybody knows who gets picked. In NBA, everybody knows Wembanyama, but baseball's hard. I mean, last year they at least had the son of a great two great Major League Baseball players as the first two picks, Jackson Holliday and Drew Jones. So that's about as exciting as you're going to get last year.
Yeah, and Holiday is really doing well. Drew Jones, not so much.
It's early though. It's early.
Yeah.
It's early.
Yeah.
And Jackson Holliday, shout out to my friend Tim Kelly, who is a diehard Orioles fan. Jackson Holliday, he went and watched him play a minor league game, and he looks like he is younger than all of our children.
Wow.
he looks like a absolute little baby. But anyway, so we'll see how that goes. Basketball wise, I think if you look, Bart Torvik is a great analytical site that's kind of the Bill Connolly along with Ken Pomeroy of college basketball. He actually adjusts with all the crazy roster stuff that's going on. He adjusts the top when you add RJ Melendez, for example, a player that came from Illinois to go to Georgia. He adjusts their projections. Georgia's projected to be 86th in the country this year, which is again, lower than say 1, where the program is, but higher than say Georgia Tech, which is 103, Georgetown, which is 171, and Georgia State, which by the way, I was starting to feel like maybe that program did not do the immediate turnaround that everyone was screaming was going to happen when Hayes was hired. But nevertheless, I don't know. Do I think Georgia's a tournament team next year? Probably not. But they at least have a shot at it, which is more than you can say for really any time from last year. Tom, I'll put it this way: no one's hired Tom Crean yet. So I think it's fair to say that's not happening.
CBS Sports has.
Yeah, CBS Sports, yes. Anyone, yes. They've hired him to talk on television. They've hired him to talk about sports, which, to tell you how hard it is to get that job, I do that. So it's not that hard to get that job. So yeah. But all right, do we have anything else we want to hit?
I would like to mention one thing. Earlier this week, the Georgia Bulldog community lost an icon.
Yeah.
A close.
Thank you for bringing that up, Scott. I meant to say it. Yeah.
A close family friend of me, Shelton Stevens, who is the former executive director of CHOA, Children's Healthcare of Atlanta. If you've been to many Georgia Tech games, Shelton was the one giving the governor's cup to either Kirby Smart or Paul Johnson, because last time I said Paul Johnson. Shelton was roommates, fraternity brothers with Louis Rizard. And he's a personal family friend of me. I think of him as a father figure. His son, Pat, and I were fraternity brothers. Pat was in my wedding. I've known Shelton for almost 29 years. I did a retirement video for him when he retired back in 2017, where probably we put probably about 40 to 50 celebrities wishing him happy retirement. I mean, everyone from Tim Hudson to Matt Ryan to Ray Goff to Jim Donnan to Kirby Smart, and the list goes on to media folk. But truly one of the kindest, most fun-loving, would do anything for you type of men that you would want to try to, emulate yourself like, passed away. Right now is the time when we are looking back. And so here's one of the great things about doing what I do. Like I said, back in 2017, I was asked to help create a retirement video for him. I joined him and his family at Truist Park, or it was SunTrust Park back then, for a Georgia Tech game when he was throwing out the first pitch. And I took some of that footage and put it in the edit. Well, it dawned on me after his passing. I was like, I keep all of my footage. And I went back to my hard drive. I had about 50 minutes of footage of me following him around, him talking to me on camera, shaking hands with Danny Hall and like Coach Guy, and talking to people on the field of that game. And I'm putting together all of that footage to send to his family just so they can have. And I talked to his son, my friend Pat, and he asked for it. Yeah, he was like, absolutely, we would love to have that. So it warms my heart to be able to do that for a special friend and someone who the Georgia Bulldog Nation loved so dearly and had such an integral role in helping kids, helping charities, raising money, and doing just so much good in his life. So We'll miss you, Shelton. I'm going to miss you as I get choked up thinking about it. But, he's a damn good dog. And yeah, just happy that you were an influential part in my life.
Will, did you know any of the history of Sheldon or Showa and the Georgia Tech game, the Thanksgiving, the old school JP game? Because it was, literally that the fundraising for that game and how that impacted both the Atlanta community and how Georgia and Georgia Tech are tied together in supporting children's health care. The University of Georgia now does, both the University of Georgia and Georgia Tech do Miracle to raise money for CHOA. That's a direct result of Shelton's work. And I do not know him in the same way Scott does, but if you've been around this community at all times, at any time for long enough, you will have run into him or been impacted by the work he did. I saw Christian Robinson tweeted out, not for self, but for others, that Sheldon lived by that. And that was the motto of Dean William Tate, who's former longtime Dean of Students for the University of Georgia. And in the Tate Center, there is a plaque that has the Latin phrase "non sibi sed alice," which actually means that. And man, did Shelton ever live that. He just basically lived his life to serve others. And he will be sorely missed.
Yeah, I had the opportunity to meet him once. I obviously did not know him as well as you all did. But thank you for the words. I really loved Scott. Obviously, very close to him in this. And I've read some of. I think a few places have had good kind of nice write-ups about him this week. I saw Drew Butler was talking about him a lot as well. So yeah, it's always a sad thing. All right, so Scott had to go run and get a dog. That dog barking in the background. It might have been Taco, or it might have just been a random dog. One never knows. But Tony, is there anything that you were wanting to make sure to hit before we transition into the next phase of our summer experience?
No, man, have fun in London. That's great. You're taking your parents, right?
And my sister is coming. I feel like the best gift. I realize this now that I'm a parent, that like one of the best gifts that I'm and you're gonna obviously your kid's getting older, you're gonna understand this. The best gift I can give my mom is just having some sort of event where all of her children are together with her husband at the same time. Yeah, those happen increasingly rarely. I'm already starting to notice this summer. I just don't know where my kids are half the time. It's weird. I'm not used to that. That's something that apparently is something that is in store for me pretty soon. But because I've got the youngest kids of all of the three hosts of this podcast, so kind of wild.
My oldest now has her dorm assignment at UGA. So yeah.
Holy cow.
Yeah, still waiting to hear from the Redcoats, but I feel pretty comfortable that she gave her best effort in the audition video. And hopefully she'll hear it pretty quickly. If for no other reason, she can have some resolution about it, and probably more importantly to me, to know whether or not she'll need she'll need tailgate space with us, or she will be too full hanging out with their Redcoat friends to come and hang out with their parents.
Yeah, she will definitely be too cool. By the way, either way, whether it's the Redcoats or something else. But thanks for that, Scott. By the way, that was great.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad to bring that up, celebrate.
So, but otherwise, I think that we've covered everything going on in the Georgia sports, and held off until because the thing is, we're getting close enough now that like we're gonna have to have one more show this summer, and at that show we will start scheduling preview shows.
And are we gonna call that our new season, even though we never get it right?
We never get it right.
We'll start debating over that.
Yeah, we started the season about 5 or 6 times, and in the old one 3 or 4 times.
But what is amazing is when we had that fateful meeting at Grindhouse, that was June of 2015. It's now June of 2023 when we made that decision. So we are fully under our 8th year.
Yeah, I love that our brand is we don't know what season to call stuff. I'm okay with that.
Absolutely.
Well, it's like if you like Survivor is on like season 39 or something. Yeah. I'm like, wait, like you have not been on for 39 years,
right?
And it's not when you've been on for 39 years. It's only been on 4 years.
And Tony's audio still is always the one that's kind of screwy.
Yeah, so that's what we do here. We keep it real. That's what we do. But I will enjoy the rest of your summers, gentlemen.
All right,
Same to
thanks,
you.
Will. Thanks, Scott.
I'm off to London, off to Montana again. I expect to see all those WSLS listeners in Missoula, Montana next week. Just come on by. We'll buy you 3 American or imported beers, whatever beers you want. I will buy you 3 if you come up and say I listen to the WSLS podcast in Missoula.
Nice.
All right. Otherwise, we'll chat soon. But great to talk to you guys. I hope we scratched the itch for you, Tony.
You absolutely did. I appreciate it.
All right, we'll talk soon. Until then, go Dogs.
Go Dogs.
And thanks so much for listening. I don't know how to add this to it, so I just wanted to hit the start. Thanks so much for listening. We will be back in, I'd guess, sometime in July. And but until then, make sure to enjoy your summer vacations, get your reading done, get caught up so you can be on the same level with us because we are experts. And take care and go Dogs and have a great summer.